Brynlee had just given birth, not metaphorically, not as part of a story about struggle or growth. She had actually just delivered her first child, hours of labor, a difficult delivery, a recovery room where she was still being monitored, still fragile, still very much in need of the people who were supposed to be her family. Her parents were not there. They had left the hospital before her daughter was born, not because of an emergency, not because something urgent had pulled them away. They had left because her brother Cody had a regional trophy ceremony that evening and they didn't want to miss his speech. A trophy ceremony. Brynlee had held her newborn daughter alone in that recovery room with a nurse she had met 4 hours earlier as the closest thing to family in the building. She didn't cry about it that night. She was too tired and too full of the specific overwhelming love of a new mother to spend what little energy she had on grief. But she remembered. She remembered everything: the empty chairs, the timestamp on the photos, the nurse who had quietly stayed an extra 20 minutes because she could see that Brynlee was alone. She kept the receipts too. Every single one. And 2 years later, when her parents sat down at a family dinner and started talking about everything they had sacrificed for their children, Brynlee opened her bag. Before Brynlee reaches into that bag and puts the first document on that table, hit subscribe right now. Because what she lays out in front of her parents is 2 years of quiet, careful, documented truth, and it is one of the most powerful moments in this entire story. New videos every single week, and you do not want to walk in at the end of this one. Hit like if Brynlee deserved so much better from the very first night. Drop a comment. Have you ever had to document the moments people failed you because you knew one day you would need the proof? Now let's go back to Columbus, because Brynlee just had a baby, and the two most important chairs in that recovery room are empty. My name is Brynlee. I am 28 years old and I live in Columbus, Ohio. I have spent most of my life being the daughter who figured things out on her own, not because I was particularly independent by nature, but because I had learned early that asking for too much produced a specific kind of disappointment that was harder to carry than the original need. My brother Cody was an athlete, 3 sports, year-round schedules, the kind of kid whose calendar ran the family's calendar, and everyone organized themselves around it without discussion. I was the other one. The one who got good grades quietly, who made her own lunch, who understood from a fairly young age that the family's emotional and logistical resources had a primary destination, and she was not it. My husband Marcus and I arrived at the hospital at 6 in the morning. Early labor, manageable, the beginning of what the midwife said could be a long day. My parents arrived by 9. My mom came in carrying a tote bag with snacks and a small stuffed animal she had picked out for the baby, and she was warm and present, and exactly the version of herself I had always hoped she could be. My dad shook Marcus's hand and pulled up a chair and asked real questions about how I was feeling and what the doctors had said. For those first few hours, the room felt right, full of the right people in the right place for the right reason. I remember thinking that clearly. I remember feeling genuinely held by it. I was still thinking that when Cody's text arrived, I didn't see the text come in. I was focused on my own body, my own breathing, the particular inward work of active labor that makes everything outside yourself go slightly distant. But I saw my parents' phones light up at the same time, the matching buzz of a group message, and I saw my mom's face shift in the way it always shifted when Cody needed something. She showed my dad the screen. He read it, and his expression did the thing it did when he was calculating something, weighing, measuring, arriving at a conclusion he had probably already started building the moment he saw her face. Cody's regional athletics trophy ceremony was that evening at 7. He wanted to know if they were coming. I watched my parents look at each other across my hospital bed. I kept breathing. They didn't take it to the hallway. That was the part I have never been able to fully set aside, that they had the conversation in the room, in front of me, while I was in labor. My mom said the ceremony was important, that Cody had worked toward this recognition for 2 years, that it would mean everything to him to see them there. My dad said the labor could go on for hours more, that first labors were unpredictable, that they would come straight back after the ceremony. My mom said it was only a few hours. My dad looked at me, genuinely looked at me, not past me, and said the doctor had said it was early stage and there was plenty of time. I looked at the ceiling and breathed through a contraction. Nobody asked me what I needed. They told me they were going to step out for the ceremony. That was the language they used, stepping out, as if they were going to get coffee or move their car to a different parking level. My mom said she would keep her phone on, that I should text the moment anything changed. My dad said they would be back by 10 at the latest, that they loved me, that I was doing so well. Marcus stood at the foot of the bed and said nothing. He was not the kind of man who said things that needed to be said in front of people who should already know them. He waited until my parents had kissed my forehead and gathered their things and walked out the door. Then he moved his chair closer to mine and took my hand and said, "I'm right here." I already knew that. I had always known that. My daughter was born at 8:47 in the evening. The delivery was faster at the end than anyone had predicted, 22 minutes of pushing after a long, quiet stretch, and then she was there, small and furious and more real than anything I had ever been handed. Marcus was beside me, his hand in mine through every second, his voice steady and close. The room had two nurses and my midwife, and the specific controlled energy of a delivery room doing what it was built to do. And it had Marcus, and it had me, and it had my daughter arriving into the world at 8:47 p.m. while 40 minutes across the city an auditorium was applauding my brother accepting a plaque for throwing a ball through a hoop. I held her against my chest and she stopped crying almost immediately. Like she already knew I was her person. The nurse asked if we wanted a photo, the first one, the real one, the one that would exist forever as the record of the first minutes of my daughter's life. Marcus took mine on my phone, me in the hospital bed, our daughter against my chest, her face turned slightly toward me, my face turned toward her. I didn't notice the empty chairs in the background until I looked at the photo later that night. Two chairs, the ones my parents had been sitting in when they arrived that morning, still positioned where they had left them, pushed slightly back from the wall. In the photo, they were visible over my left shoulder. Empty. I looked at that photo for a long time. Then I saved it to two places on my phone. I already knew, somewhere in the back of my mind, that I was going to need it later. Her parents arrived at the hospital at 10:30 that night, her mom coming through the door first, slightly breathless, her dad behind her carrying his jacket over one arm. They had come straight from the ceremony the way they said they would. Her mom's face when she saw the baby was genuine, the specific undone quality of a grandmother seeing a grandchild for the first time, real and unperformable. Brynlee received their arrival with the quiet exhaustion of a woman who had just delivered a baby and had been awake for 19 hours. She let her mom hold the baby. She answered their questions. And then her mom pulled out her phone and showed Brynlee 3 photos of Cody holding his trophy at the ceremony. Her mom was smiling when she showed them. Brynlee noticed it at 2 in the morning, the specific wakeful hour of new motherhood when the baby had just fed, and the room was quiet and the phone was the only light. Her mom had posted to social media a photo of herself holding the newborn, taken during the 10:30 arrival, less than 90 minutes after Brynlee had delivered, with a caption about the most beautiful day and new beginnings, and being the luckiest grandmother. The post had 47 likes by 2 in the morning. Brynlee looked at the photo of her mom's face glowing over her daughter's head and thought about the timestamp on the delivery photo, 8:47 p.m. Her mom had been 40 minutes away at 8:47 p.m. sitting in an auditorium. She put her phone face down and fed her daughter in the dark. 3 weeks postpartum was harder than Brynlee had expected, the sleep deprivation compounding, the physical recovery still incomplete, the emotional landscape of new motherhood shifting under her feet in ways she hadn't fully anticipated. Marcus was back at work. She was home alone with the baby for long stretches that were both profound and exhausting simultaneously. She called her mom on a Tuesday morning and asked if she could come stay for a few days, just to help with the baby, to give Brynlee a few hours of unbroken sleep, to be present in the way that mothers were supposed to be present for their daughters in the weeks after birth. Her mom's response came quickly. She said she had already promised Cody she would help him move to his new apartment that weekend. She said she was sorry. She said they would figure it out another time. Marcus came home that evening to find Brynlee sitting at the kitchen table with the baby asleep in the bassinet beside her, and an expression on her face he recognized, not crying, not visibly distressed, just the particular stillness of a woman who had arrived at a decision. He set his bag down and sat across from her without saying anything yet. He had learned to read her silences accurately. She told him about the call. She told him what her mom had said about Cody's apartment. She said she was not surprised, which was the saddest part. Marcus looked at her for a long moment and asked what she needed. Brynlee looked back at him steadily. She said, "I need a notebook and I need to start writing things down." Marcus got up and found her. She dated the first entry that same evening, 3 weeks and 2 days after the birth. She wrote it the way she wrote everything, clearly, specifically, without emotional embellishment. The date, her mom's words, the specific reason given. The length of the call. She wrote the same entry about the hospital night, the time her parents left, the time her daughter was born, the time her parents returned, what her mom said when she showed her the trophy photos. She wrote without anger because anger was not what she felt. What she felt was the specific resolution of a woman who had spent her whole life allowing things to be undocumented because she had always believed the people involved would remember. She had stopped believing that the night her daughter was born in a room with two empty chairs. The notebook filled slowly and steadily over the following 18 months, not with dramatic incidents or explosive confrontations, but with the quiet accumulation of a pattern that became undeniable when read in sequence. Cody's graduation celebration fell on the same weekend. Brynlee had asked her parents to visit. They attended his celebration and rescheduled her visit twice before it stopped being rescheduled and simply disappeared from the calendar. Her dad's birthday dinner was planned on a date Brynlee had specifically mentioned conflicted with her daughter's first medical procedure. Her parents went ahead with the original date. Every entry was specific, dated, factual. No entry said this hurt me or this was unfair. They simply said what happened and when and who was chosen. By the time her daughter turned two, Brynlee had a complete file. The notebook, the hospital timestamp photo saved and printed, the auditorium program from Cody's trophy ceremony that she had found online through her county's athletics association records, call logs from her phone showing the dates and durations of requests made and declined, and the hospital bill from the night of the birth, paid in full by Marcus, his name in the emergency contact field, hers in the patient field. No family member listed as present at discharge. She had organized it the way she organized everything at work, chronologically, clearly labeled, nothing superfluous. She was not building a case out of bitterness. She was building a record out of the same instinct that had made her a good mother from the very first night, the understanding that the truth deserved to be documented. The family dinner invitation came through a group text in early October. Her mom's message, warm and enthusiastic, talking about togetherness and the importance of family, and how they didn't all sit down together nearly enough. She named a date 3 weeks out, a Saturday evening at her parents' house in Columbus, and said she was going to make the pot roast everyone loved. Brynlee read the message sitting at her kitchen table while her daughter ate breakfast in the high chair beside her. She read it twice. 2 years of entries in her notebook, a folder with a timestamp photo and an auditorium program, and 18 months of dated documentation. She typed back one word, "We'll be there," and went back to her daughter's breakfast. The dinner itself started the way family dinners always started: food on the table, the particular warmth of her parents' house, Cody arriving loud and easy, and immediately comfortable the way he always was in rooms where he was welcome. Her dad poured wine and stood at the head of the table with his glass raised, and the expression he wore when he was about to say something he had been composing in his head for a few days. He talked about family. He talked about what it meant to show up for each other through seasons of difficulty and seasons of joy. He talked about the particular kind of love that parents carried, the sacrifices made quietly, the things given without being asked, the ways a family held itself together through sheer collective commitment. He was genuinely moved by his own words. Brynlee listened to every one of them. When her dad finished his toast, her mom reached over and touched his arm and said something that she offered as a simple truth, the kind of thing you say when you believe it so completely that it doesn't occur to you to examine it first. She said that the mark of good parents was that they gave everything without keeping score. She said it warmly, directed at the table generally, the way people deliver philosophies they have carried for a long time without being challenged. Brynlee's daughter was sitting in a portable high chair at the corner of the table, working through a piece of bread with the focused determination of a 2-year-old. Brynlee looked at her daughter for a moment after her mom said it. Then she looked back at her mom. She said nothing yet. The conversation moved naturally from the toast into a broader reflection on the family's year, and it moved, as it usually did, toward Cody. His new job was discussed with genuine pride. His apartment was praised. A recent athletic achievement he had posted about was brought up and elaborated on. Her dad said Cody's work ethic had always been extraordinary, that watching him commit to something and pursue it had been one of the genuine privileges of parenthood. Her mom said she didn't think people understood what it took to support a child like Cody, the time and the presence and the energy required over years of showing up. She said it without any awareness of how it landed across the table. Brynlee's hands were in her lap. Her bag was on the chair beside her. Nobody at the table had paid particular attention to Brynlee's bag. It was a standard tote, the kind she carried everywhere. Nothing remarkable about it sitting on the empty chair to her right. Marcus had noticed it. He had watched her put it there when they arrived, and he had understood immediately what was inside it and what the evening might become. He had not asked her any questions about it during the drive over. He had not said anything cautionary or encouraging. He had simply driven them to her parents' house and walked in beside her and taken his seat and trusted her completely, the way he had trusted her every day since the night she asked him to find her a notebook. He was sitting across the table now, quiet and steady, watching her the way he always watched her when something important was happening. Her dad turned toward Brynlee midway through the meal, between the main course and whatever was coming next, with the warm, deliberate attention of a father who was aware he hadn't directed enough of the evening toward his daughter. He said he hoped she knew how proud he was of her. He said watching her become a mother had been one of the most moving things he had experienced as a parent. He said she had always been strong and that her daughter was lucky to have her. He said it with genuine feeling. She could tell the feeling was real, which was the complicated part. He was not a man who didn't love her. He was a man who had no idea what love had looked like in practice from her side of it. She let him finish. She looked at him steadily. The table was still warm, the food mostly finished, the wine glasses refilled, the comfortable post-dinner looseness settling in around the edges of the conversation. Her dad had just finished telling her he hoped she knew how much they loved her. Her mom was nodding. Cody was checking something on his phone under the table with the slightly guilty expression of someone who knew it was rude but couldn't help it. Marcus was very still across from her. Brynlee looked at her dad for a moment after his words landed. She held eye contact long enough for it to be deliberate. Then she turned to the chair beside her, unzipped the tote bag, and reached inside with the calm, unhurried movement of someone who had known exactly what they were going to do for 2 years. Brynlee placed the folder on the table between the bread basket and her wine glass, not dramatically, not with a speech preceding it, just set it down the way you set down something that belongs on the surface in front of you. It was a standard manila folder, slightly thick, labeled on the tab in her handwriting. She opened it and placed the contents in a single organized stack in front of her without distributing anything yet. The table registered it the way tables register unexpected things, a brief collective stillness, eyes moving toward the folder and then toward Brynlee and then back to the folder. Her dad set his wine glass down. Her mom straightened slightly. Cody looked up from his phone. Marcus looked at his plate. Brynlee looked at her dad and said, "I want to show you something." She took the hospital timestamp photo from the top of the stack and placed it flat on the table facing her parents. It was printed clearly, the image she had looked at 2 in the morning, while her mom's social media post was collecting likes. Herself in the hospital bed, her daughter against her chest. The time stamp in the corner reads 8:47 p.m., and visible over her left shoulder, slightly out of focus but unmistakable, 2 empty chairs pushed back from the wall. She didn't say anything immediately. She let her parents look at it. Her mom leaned forward. Her dad picked it up carefully with both hands. He looked at the timestamp. He looked at the chairs. Something moved across his face that he didn't manage to fully contain. While her dad was still holding the hospital photo, Brynlee reached into the folder and placed a second document beside it, the auditorium program from Cody's Regional Athletics Trophy Ceremony. She had found it through the County Athletics Association website, printed it cleanly, and added it to the folder without annotation. It had everything on it that needed to be there: the date, the venue, the event title, and the start time listed in the top right corner. 7 o'clock, the same evening as the timestamp photo. She placed it precisely beside the hospital image so the date on the program and the date on the photo timestamp were both visible simultaneously. Her dad looked at both documents side by side. He set the hospital photo down slowly. Her mom had stopped leaning forward. Brynlee gave her parents a moment with the first 2 documents before she continued. She watched her dad's face process the side-by-side reality of what he was looking at, the delivery photo, and the ceremony program from the same evening. And she waited until she could see the full weight of it had landed before reaching into the folder again. The next document was a printed call log, her phone records from 3 weeks postpartum, the specific Tuesday morning she had called her mom asking for help. Date, time, duration. Below it she had printed her own handwritten entry from her notebook, the entry she had written that same evening after Marcus came home. Her mom's exact words quoted directly. The reason given. The thing that had been prioritized instead. She placed it on the table without comment. The next section of the folder was the most substantial, 18 months of dated entries, printed from her notebook in chronological order. She didn't read them aloud. She placed the stack in the center of the table where both her parents could reach it and said, "These are dated, they go in order." Her dad picked up the first page. Her mom reached for the second. The entries were brief, never more than a paragraph, usually less. Each one documented a specific date, a specific request or occasion, and a specific outcome. Some entries were about Cody's events being chosen. Some were about requests for help going unmet. Some were simply observations, a holiday call that lasted 4 minutes, a visit that was rescheduled until it quietly stopped being rescheduled. Every page was dated. Every entry was specific. Nothing was embellished. The second to last item Brynlee placed on the table was the hospital bill from the night of the birth. The full statement, paid in full, with the account details and the emergency contact section clearly visible at the top of the page. In the emergency contact field, Marcus's name, Marcus's number, Marcus listed as present at discharge. In the family present at the delivery field, a section she had not noticed on the original paperwork until she requested a copy of her records months later, the nurse had written, husband only. Brynlee placed it on the table facing her parents. Her mom looked at the emergency contact field. Her dad looked at the family present section. The room was quiet enough that the 2-year-old playing with a piece of bread at the corner of the table sounded very loud. Brynlee placed the last item, the auditorium photo she had found online, a wide shot of the ceremony posted by the Athletics Association, timestamp 9:02 p.m., showing the audience in their seats. She didn't point to her parents in the crowd. She didn't need to. She placed it beside the hospital delivery photo one more time, 8:47 p.m., her daughter, the empty chairs, and the 9:02 p.m. ceremony photo side by side, 15 minutes apart. Then she looked at her parents and said the one sentence she had been carrying for 2 years, quietly, clearly, without any performance of emotion around it. She said, "You said you don't keep score. I kept it for you." The table was completely still. Her daughter dropped her bread on the floor and nobody moved to pick it up. Cody had put his phone away somewhere between the call log and the hospital bill. Brynlee had noticed it in her peripheral vision without acknowledging it. He had been reading the documents as her parents read them, leaning slightly forward following the sequence. When Brynlee placed the final 2 photos side by side, the delivery room at 8:47 p.m. and the auditorium at 9:02 p.m., Cody looked at them for a long moment. Then he looked at his parents. His expression was not the one Brynlee had expected. She had anticipated something defensive, some version of the automatic protectiveness that family dynamics often produced when comfortable narratives were disturbed. What she saw instead was something quieter and more genuine. He looked, simply and completely, like someone who had just learned something he wished he had known a long time ago. Her dad spoke first, setting the documents down carefully and straightening in his chair with the particular posture of a man who was going to try to find the reasonable explanation that made the unreasonable thing make sense. He said the night of the birth had been a genuinely difficult call, that they had believed there was time, that first labors were notoriously unpredictable, that they had never intended to miss the delivery. He said they had come back as soon as the ceremony ended. He said they had been there. Brynlee waited until he finished. She looked at him steadily and said, "The timestamp says 8:47, Dad. The ceremony started at 7. You made it to both." She made it into the world with 2 empty chairs. She said it without heat. Just the math. Her mom looked at Brynlee with an expression that carried genuine distress, the specific distress of a person who loves someone and is only now understanding the gap between their love and their actions. She said she hadn't known Brynlee felt this way. She said if Brynlee had told her how much it hurt she would have, and then she stopped herself because she could hear where the sentence was going. Brynlee said, "Mom, I'm not showing you how I felt, I'm showing you what happened." She tapped the documents on the table once lightly, not aggressively. The timestamp doesn't have feelings. The call log doesn't have feelings. The hospital bill doesn't have feelings. These are just facts. What you do with them is what matters now. Cody had been quiet through his parents' responses, sitting very still, which was unusual for him, his hands flat on the table. When he spoke, his voice was different from its usual register, quieter, more careful, like he was measuring each word before releasing it. He said he had not known they left the hospital that night. He said nobody had told him, not that evening, not afterward, not ever. He said he had been told his parents couldn't make the ceremony until later because of the hospital situation, that they had shown up after his speech had already started, slipped into the back row. He looked at his parents when he said this. Then he looked at Brynlee. He said, "I didn't know it was because they left you." His voice was completely steady and completely serious. What Cody said changed the temperature of the room in a way that nothing else had, not the documents, not Brynlee's quiet sentences, not her dad's attempted explanation. Because Cody's words removed the last available interpretation that could have softened the evening's accounting. Her parents had not left the hospital for the ceremony because it was the only way to see Cody receive his recognition. They had left the hospital and arrived late to the ceremony, which meant the math was even simpler than the timestamp had suggested. There had been no impossible choice between 2 competing needs. There had simply been a choice. Her parents sat with that in the particular silence of people who have run out of the gentle explanations that usually cushion these moments. Her dad reached across the table toward Brynlee, not grabbing, not insisting, just extending his hand across the surface the way people do when words have run out and they need the gesture to carry what language can't reach. Brynlee looked at his hand for a moment. She thought about the night her daughter was born. She thought about the two chairs visible over her shoulder in the timestamp photo. She thought about the Tuesday morning call in Cody's apartment and 18 months of dated notebook entries. She thought about her daughter sitting in the high chair at the corner of the table, oblivious and perfect, eating bread and dropping it on the floor. She did not lean forward. She did not pull away. She placed her hand in her dad's and held it without filling the silence that needed to stay full for a while longer. Brynlee buckled her daughter into the car seat at 9:30, her daughter already drowsy, warm from the evening, completely unbothered by the adult world and its reckonings. Marcus got in the driver's side and pulled out of her parents' driveway without saying anything immediately. They drove for a few minutes in the specific, comfortable quiet of two people who had just been through something significant together and didn't need to process it out loud right away. Then Marcus reached across the center console and put his hand briefly over hers. She looked out the window at the Columbus streets passing by. The folder was in her bag on the back seat. She had brought it in full and she was bringing it home the same way, every receipt still inside, every document still in order. She didn't need to leave it there. She had never needed them to keep it. She just needed them to see it. And finally, completely, they had.